Hi, John X Stevie here. We'll be talking about a fantasy action film called A Writer's Odyssey. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. Far away in the lands of an ancient city, a little girl's voice can be heard shouting for her father inside the underground caves. A man runs desperately towards the sound of his daughter, but only sees the presence of a deity's aura blocking his way. It turns out that everything was a dream that belongs to a man called Guan Ning, and his daughter Tangerine has been missing for over 6 years. He waits patiently on the hilltop and eventually sees a truck driving by on the road, causing the man to tremble in fury. The two men in the vehicle drive slowly in the fog, and suddenly, numerous rocks begin to fly towards the truck, breaking the windshields and knocking off the mirrors. It's revealed that Guan Ning is responsible for the attacks as he throws rocks towards the men in blinding speed, somehow making a curve along the way. The truck crashes towards the side of the road and stops, while Guan Ning rushes towards the driver, beating him continuously using a stick. He shows the man a picture of his daughter and demands to know where the driver took her, but before the interrogation is over, the second man comes out and knocks Guan Ning down, giving them a chance to run away. The police arrive soon after and captures the man, confusing Guan Ning as one of the human traffickers. Luckily, he begins attacking one of the officers when the man was left alone and manages to break free after escaping into a woman's car who seems to have been purposely waiting for him. It turns out that the woman's name is Lin, and she knows every minute details about the man, including his recurring dreams about his daughter. She brings Guan Ling to her office and shows him that they have located 5 different girls who might be the man's daughter using their company's vast resources. Unfortunately, the man can no longer recognize his child after so many years, preventing him to identify his daughter from the pictures. Lin promises to use their DNA technology to find the man's daughter, but she also demands Guan Ling to complete a task for her superior Li, who's also the owner of the company. Lin is aware of the man's powers to control projectiles that he throws and wants the man to kill a writer named Khan, who uses himself as the main character for his novel. Apparently, there's an evil deity called Red Ming in the author's book, and every time the character is wounded, her boss also falls into great illness. They tried everything to stop the author from writing the story, but the man refuses to comply, and her boss decided that the only way to end this curse is to end the author's life. Guan Ling has a hard time believing this ridiculous tale, but he has no choice but to take the deal as he sees no other way in finding his daughter. The man begins to listen to the audiobooks of the author as he travels on boats and realizes that the contents are almost identical to his dreams. In the lands that he sees every time he sleeps, the main character Khan is running away from the bounty hunters who attacks him with supernatural powers. He continues to run despite being heavily wounded, but eventually arrives on the edge of a cliff surrounded by enemies who try to take his life. Luckily, his sister rushes in to the rescue and kills the attackers by using her spear. She tells her brother to run away from the city and pushes him over the cliff, causing the man to fall into the waters below. The woman begins fighting the hunters by herself, slashing at the enemies furiously and dodging their attacks with her amazing agility. She manages to kill many of the soldiers as their leader watches her from a distance and plans to attack. The old man finally charges in and strikes at the woman, knocking her backwards using incredible strength. At the same time, Khan has recovered inside the water, but instead of listening to his sister, the man begins climbing back onto the mountain, unable to leave his family behind. When he finally makes it back on land, Khan sees the sister heavily wounded on the ground, who still tries to protect him by telling him to run. Before the woman can finish talking, the old man steps on her body and stabs her right in the back, killing her in front of her brother. Khan runs to the woman and cries hopelessly as he sees her take the last breath, but soon realizes that the enemy is also heavily damaged by the fight. Apparently, the hunter was hired by the deity called Red Ming, and the man laughs while telling Khan that he has nowhere to run. In a fit of rage, he pulls the spear out from the man's back, causing the hunter to scream in agony. Khan ignores the man's plea for mercy and stabs him right in the heart, finally avenging his sister's death. After burying his family, Khan decides to go after the evil god instead of running like his sister told him, refusing to be the prey anymore. However, before the man leaves, the armor from the hunter's body disassembles and rushes towards Khan, latching onto him like a parasite and sucking into his blood vessels. A horrific eye forms in the center of the armor and reveals that this demon was drinking from the old man's blood before Khan ended his life. The armor finds the man's desire to slay a deity amusing and demands to be a spectator for the journey. journey as it shows Khan the way into the Red Ming's temple. At the same time, Guan Ning has arrived in the city where the author resides and eventually finds the man leaving his home. He begins following the writer in order to isolate the man for the kill, but is quickly led to a library instead. With no other choice, he grabs a book and tries to blend in, but Khan has noticed the stalker very quickly as the place is basically empty. The writer walks over and confronts him by questioning his motivations, but Guan Ning is able to react quickly by claiming to be one of the author's fans. Khan is exhilarated by the recognition and begins asking a series of questions about Guan Ning's past, eventually finding out that the man came all the way across the seas. Guan Ning's unexpected appearance has apparently cured the writer's mental block for his new character, and Khan begins writing immediately from the sudden inspiration. He continues the story where the main character is traveling across the great seas, avoiding the monsters in the waters while he heads closer to the deity's temple. Khan eventually arrives inside a city and sees the people celebrating in a festival, where colorful statues are being displayed while the drums are being hammered. Unsure of what's going on, he follows the people into the outer edges of town, where a giant statue of the Red Ming appears in the center. The people begin to worship the deity by bowing continuously, while the statue raises the arm and points towards the neighboring town. To the man's shock, everyone starts taking out their weapons and begins chanting the god's name, preparing to battle their neighbors to death. The demon armor explains that the deity thrives on humanity's suffering and is responsible for destroying most of the cities, leaving only 2 standing. The townsmen begin to charge across the battlefield as the neighboring archers shoot desperately at the invaders, killing many of the people as they fall from the sea of arrows. However, the tides quickly turn when numerous dragons made from hot air balloons appear and heads towards the neighboring town, scaring the archers into shooting aimlessly at the sky. The people on the dragons begin to throw numerous jars of tar onto the enemies below, covering them with extremely flammable materials. Flame arrows are quickly shot by the followers of the evil god, heading towards the enemy's gate and creating a sea of fire. Khan watches in utter disgust as he sees the people screaming while being burned alive, all because of the unholy deity. After the furious battle, the main character walks into the city, only to see the man pillaging and killing everyone in sight. Before he can make sense of this reality, a battle horn sounds from far away, and the people all bow down in fear as multiple knights in crimson armor rush in on their horses. Khan watches while hiding behind the buildings and recognizes their flags as resembling the marks of the hunters, revealing that the knights are disciples of the evil god. The horseman rides away while sounding the horns once again, prompting the people to run in fear as they scream that the curfew is in place. Meanwhile, Guan Ning is trying to lure the author away from the population centers so that he may have a chance to kill the man without being noticed. They head into the abandoned field that's covered in plants, and Khan begins hearing a lullaby from the far distance, while Guan Ning is too tense to notice the music. The author has a sudden inspiration once again after listening to the song, and immediately begins writing a new character that's based on the lyrics. The novel continues as the main character chases recklessly behind the Red Knights and notices a young girl by the alleys trying to save her friend, but upon examination, the boy has died a long time ago. Khan helps the girl bury her friend and learns that the Red Ming disallows anyone to leave their home after sunset, threatening to kill all who disobeys the orders. The girl begins playing the flute in memory of the fallen friend, but the music seems to have attracted the attention of one of the knights, who appears quickly at the graveyard. Thinking that the warrior is here to slay them for disobeying the curfew, Khan quickly runs away with the girl while the knight jumps towards them and chases closely behind. They run into the cities and tries to climb onto the buildings, but the warrior crashes through the barriers with incredible strength and leaps onto the rooftops. Khan tries to carry the girl and run, but the warrior jumps once again and barely misses them while breaking through the ceilings and landing inside the buildings. The knight continues chasing after them as he breaks through the walls like paper, but what he doesn't realize is that Khan plans to trick him by switching the girl using a straw man. The main character jumps down from the buildings and barely misses the attacker, sending him crashing towards the ground. The man continues to run while evading the attacks, but eventually gets trapped by the knight as he grabs onto the decoy, revealing that it's nothing but straws. Khan charges at the enemy and lands a direct hit on the head, but the attack was ineffective as the knight recovers quickly and kicks the man across the field. The warrior pulls out the weapon from his mask and surprisingly reveals Guan Ning's face from underneath. Before the knight can deal the final blow, the girl shouts for him to stop, and the warrior begins turning around, switching the attention to the young child. However, as the sun finally sets, the knight begins to act strangely as he loses control of his body, eventually stopping completely, giving Khan the chance to escape with the girl. At the same time, Guan Ning sneaks behind the author while the man is engulfed in writing the story, but strangely, he begins having visions as if he was chasing the girl in the novel. Khan eventually realizes that his friend is missing, but suddenly gets hit by rocks that knocks him to the ground, causing him to scream in pain. Guan Ning continues throwing the stones, landing a devastating hit on the writer's forehead, knocking the man into the trenches. He rushes out from behind the buildings and tries to end the man's life, while singing the lullaby for his daughter, trying to justify for his terrible actions. Surprisingly, Guan Ning begins hearing the same song that Khan was talking about earlier, and realizes that it's the lullaby only his daughter would know. The man runs quickly as he tries to follow the music, eventually arriving back into the city and sees a homeless boy on the ground, going through the garbage while singing the song. Guan Ning demands to know where he learned to sing the lullaby, but the man's extreme emotions only manages to scare the boy away as they both run desperately in the streets. The man chases furiously behind the boy, but he suddenly begins having the visions again, like he was chasing the young girl in the novels as the Crimson Warrior.